So, Democrats, not great last night. Not great, Bob, at all. So Democrats went down to flaming, ferocious defeat in Virginia. It was just a bloodbath, a brutal, sickening bloodbath, and very upsetting. I'm just all broken up about it this morning. Now remember, Joe Biden had predicted massive victory while he was in Glasgow yesterday. It turns out that Joe Biden couldn't be woken up to deliver the actual bad news this morning, but here he was yesterday trying to say that everything was going to go great in Virginia last night. It did not go great in Virginia. Spoiler alert.
We're going to win. I think we're going to win in Virginia. And you're reporting it being close. The race is very close. It's about who shows up, who turns out. And granted, I did win by a large margin. But the point of the matter is that I think that this is going to be, we all knew from the beginning, it's going to be a tight race.
Okay, we didn't all know that from the beginning. If you look at the polls, Glenn Youngkin was down like double digits at the beginning of this race, and then he won last night by a fairly solid margin. According to the New York Times, Republicans claimed the governorship of Virginia for the first time in more than a decade on Wednesday, electing businessman Glenn Youngkin and presenting their party with a formula for how to exploit President Biden's vulnerabilities and evade the shadow of Donald Trump in Democratic-leaning states. Youngkin, 54, a wealthy former private equity executive making his first run for office, elevated education and taxes while projecting a suburban dad demeanor to demonstrate he was different from Trump without saying so outright. He defeated former Governor Terry McAuliffe, a Democrat who, with Trump out of office, struggled to generate enthusiasm among liberals at a moment when conservatives are energized in opposition to Mr. Biden. This race was called pretty much off the bat. By fairly early last night, people knew that Youngkin was going to win. And it wasn't just that Republicans won with Youngkin at the top of the ticket. They also won the lieutenant governor's race in Virginia. They won the attorney general's race in Virginia. And in fact, they elected the first black female lieutenant governor in the history of the state of Virginia. I believe the first Hispanic AG in the history of the state of Virginia, which means, as we'll see, that the Republicans, again, demonstrating their vicious, brutal white supremacy in the oddest of ways by electing a very diverse slate of candidates to higher office. Meanwhile, by the way, over in New Jersey, it is a dead heat right now between the Republican gubernatorial candidate, Jack Ciattarelli, who no one knew who he was or knows who he is today, against Phil Murphy, who is the widely touted governor of New Jersey. He was Captain COVID over there. He locked down pretty much everything, and he was supposed to run away with that race. The polls showed that he was up by near double digits, not like months ago, like McAuliffe was, and then the race tightened. He was up double digits pretty much a week ago. He was up 8 in the Real Clear Politics polling average yesterday. And now that race is so deadlocked, it's going to go to recount. According to the New York Times, no less bracing for Democrats was a second gubernatorial election unfolding in New Jersey. The incumbent governor, Philip Murphy, was narrowly trailing a relatively obscure Republican challenger, Jack Ciattarelli, deep into the night. A mainstream liberal with ties to the White House, Murphy was staking his hopes for a comeback on a strong performance in several solidly Democratic areas where votes were slow to report. Again, about 98% of the vote in at this point, and it's pretty much dead heat. The unexpected closeness of the race underscored the overall vulnerability of the Democratic Party. Much like Mr. Youngkin in Virginia, Mr. Ciattarelli appeared to benefit from robust turnout in rural and conservative-leaning areas of the state while making inroads in denser areas such as Bergen County, the populous suburb of New York City. Unlike Youngkin, Ciattarelli, a former state legislator, had no vast personal fortune to spend on his candidacy. National Republicans looked at his campaign as an extreme long shot. Even if Murphy were to prevail, it's going to be by a minute fraction. Remember, Joe Biden won the state of New Jersey by 16 points. 16 points. Joe Biden won the state of Virginia by 10 points. Brutal. So Youngkin in Virginia, he said, today we are going to change the trajectory of this Commonwealth. Meanwhile, McAuliffe refused to concede as of late last night. Instead, he just went out and did like a weird little dance. It was very, very strange. Bottom line is, terrible news in Virginia for the Democratic Party. And if you look at the internals on the poll numbers, they're just, horrifying for the Democrats. Loudoun County, right? That is a Democratic county. There was a 19-point swing to the GOP in Loudoun County. And here I must give a shout out to the Daily Wire's own reporter, Luke Rosiak, who's been doing unbelievable reporting from on the ground in Loudoun County. And he is the person who uncovered this massive scandal wherein the school board of Loudoun County was essentially covering up the rape of a student in their bathroom while promoting a transgender bathroom bill. And turns out there are all sorts of other issues with malfeasance by the school board in that district. And that county swung 19 percentage points toward Republicans in this election cycle. So investigative reporting matters. You should head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code REALNEWS to get 25% off. Honestly, support our investigative reporting efforts. They really do make a difference. Also, shout out to Christopher Rufo, who did an unbelievable job covering critical race theory across the country, as well, specifically in Virginia. As we will see, Democrats, their plan is just to deny that they are radical at all and then to call everyone who notices a racist. So 19-point swing in Loudoun County. Also, McAuliffe, according to Sahil Kapoor, who's a national political reporter at NBC News, McAuliffe, the Democrat, he ran a bit ahead of Biden among the non-white voters in Virginia. He ran ahead of Biden among those voters. He got absolutely clocked by white women. In 2020, white women went for Biden 50-49. It wasn't a bigger margin because a lot of rural and non-college educated white women went for Trump. So it was 50-49 for Biden in Virginia in 2020. Virginia 2021, Youngkin 57, McAuliffe 43. That is a 15-point swing to the GOP with that group. That is particularly among white women who are non-college graduates. In 2020, 56% of white women who are non-college graduates went for Trump. 44% went to Biden. Okay, so that was a split in favor of Trump, but a lot evener than last night. Last night, 75% for Youngkin, 25% for McAuliffe among white women who are non-college educated. Okay, what does that say? It says that when you have someone who is not quite as offensive at the top of a particular ticket, that you can win back all of those suburban white women. You can hold the Trump coalition, which is what Youngkin did. He didn't crap on Trump. He didn't spend the campaign crapping on Trump. Instead, he said he appreciated a lot of things about Trump, but he also didn't humor a lot of Trump's more absurd contentions. And then he made the issues not about Trump. He just avoided making the election about Trump. And he swamped Terry McAuliffe, particularly with white women. Back to some of these exit polling numbers, just brutal for the Democrats. On the economy and jobs, 35% of voters in the Virginia election said that was their top issue, the economy and jobs. Youngkin won that group 63-36. Okay, on the issue of education, which was the number 3 issue among these exit voters, 15% of people said it was their number 1 issue. 71% went for Youngkin, 71-29. Okay, that is Luke's reporting. That is Chris Rufo's reporting. That is people who are pointing out what exactly is being taught to your kids in schools. That is not a Virginia issue, by the way. That is a national issue. And if Republicans don't hold on to that, if they don't point out, I've been saying this literally since I began my career. The indoctrination of children in public schools is a disaster area for the country. If Republicans run on the curriculum, they are going to win because parents don't actually know what kids are being taught. Okay, so on the economy and jobs, Youngkin outpaces McAuliffe 63-36. On education, he outpaces McAuliffe 71-29. On coronavirus, McAuliffe wins 78-22, but no one cares about that anymore because basically this is all over. Among people who said racism was their number 1 issue, unsurprisingly, McAuliffe won 84-15. On abortion, only 5% of people said it was their top issue, but 56% of those people actually voted for Youngkin. So all of the anti-choice, he's an anti-choice radical who's going to stop abortion, that actually cut in Youngkin's favor. On immigration, 94%-5 in favor of Youngkin. And so you can see exactly why Youngkin won right here. How bad were the exit polls for Democrats here? Okay, I'm going to go by group here. Okay, so among 18-44 men, Youngkin was competitive. He only lost to McAuliffe 52-47. Among men aged 45 plus, 58-42 for Youngkin. Among Latinos and Hispanics in Virginia, Youngkin won outright, 54-45. He also won 13% of the black vote and 58% of the white vote. Devastating numbers for the Democrats. Plus, as Nate Cohn points out over at the New York Times, Biden has nearly the worst approval ratings of any president on record at this stage of his presidency. The worst approval ratings of any president on record at this stage of his presidency. Okay, so a few takeaways right here. Okay, number 1, it turns out that telling your voters to vote is actually a better strategy than telling your voters not to vote. Republicans in those Georgia Senate races at the beginning of this year, they basically told their voters your vote doesn't matter, and then people didn't show up, and then Republicans lost in what is a red state. Okay, Virginia is a very blue state, and Republicans said you should show up and you should vote, and your vote counts. And whether or not you are concerned about voter fraud, the best way to win is to go and vote. And focusing in on, are they going to steal it? Is it going to be stolen? Is your vote going to count? Is a bad way of running an election cycle. It is a bad idea moving forward. Okay, point number 2, run against the Democrats. As always, run against the Democrats. Make the Democrats your opponent. I said this throughout 2020. If people had thought that Joe Biden was the issue, Joe Biden would have lost. They didn't. They thought Trump was the issue, and so Trump lost. In Virginia, People thought Terry McAuliffe and the Democrats were the issue, so Youngkin won. It's that simple. If the election is about your opponent loses. Terry McAuliffe tried to do that to Youngkin, and he completely failed because Youngkin is inoffensive. Youngkin does not make people feel uncomfortable. Youngkin did what good candidates do. He made it very difficult to vote for his opponent, and he made it very easy to vote for him. That is what good candidates do. Bad candidates make it easy to vote for your opponent and difficult to vote for you. That's what a bad candidate does. That's what Terry McAuliffe did. He went out there like a fool, and he said parents should not be in control of their children's education, and then he kept doubling down on that while campaigning with Randy Weingarten. He kept telling parents that they are racist if they mention the phrase critical race theory. He kept saying over and over and over again that parents should not determine whether or not they are indoctrinated, their kids are indoctrinated with LGBTQ propaganda in schools. That's up to the school boards. Right? That is it. He made it very difficult for people to vote for him, and he made it very easy for people to vote for Youngkin because he just kept shouting that Youngkin was a racist Trumpkin. He kept saying it over and over, and that just didn't wash because Youngkin isn't. And so Youngkin won. And these are major lessons that Republicans need to take for the future if they hope to continue winning. Also, further lessons. Republicans should not shy away from the culture wars. So I know that there's the smart set in Republican politics who are constantly saying that the culture wars are it's a dummies game. Why are you arguing on culture? The answer is culture motivates people. Culture gets people up in the morning. How your kids are educated in schools matters a lot more to people than their marginal tax rate. I care a hell of a lot about my marginal tax rate. It makes a big difference in my life. But I can tell you, how my kids are educated in school matters 1 million times more than that. When Republicans abandon the social issues, when they pretend the social issues don't matter, or they are a distraction from the main issues, this is sort of how Romney ran his campaign in 2012. They lose. Romney did not run against Barack Obama's radicalism in 2012. He ran against his economic plan. That is not how you win. The way that you win is by pointing out the social radicalism of your political opponent and presenting a good economic plan, which is what Youngkin did. Also, this race made clear that Republicans can indeed keep together the Trump coalition, and they don't have to have all of the bad tweets to go along with it. Kristen Soltis Anderson, who's a pollster for the Washington, she has a piece for the Washington Examiner. She points out Youngkin got all the upside of Trump, but none of the downside. She says there's little doubt Trump will try to take credit for Youngkin's victory. To be clear, Trump quite literally phoned it in at the last minute for Youngkin after enough polls showed victory was in sight. Youngkin and Trump did not donate to each other. Youngkin said the bare minimum about Trump necessary to survive the primary process. What Trump did do over the last 5 years was engage many formerly disconnected voters and turn them into more habitual voters for the GOP. So that was good, what Trump did. He continues to have an impact on politics by turning out the vote in rural areas, just by having activated people who are now used to voting. That's a big thing. Youngkin's savvy move was not to embrace Trump, but also not to insult Trump or disavow him. He was not about being pro or anti-Trump. He was about not being Trump. He was about being Youngkin. Okay, and biggest lesson of all right now, Republicans have a target-rich environment. The Democrats are an absolute mess. They're a mess. Okay, Joe Biden is a disaster area. And again, it wasn't just in Virginia. It's all over the country. It's all over the country. I'm going to give you some results from other areas of the country that really cut against the Democratic Party. 2022 is looking like an absolute wipeout for the Democrats. I would not be surprised if Republicans pick up 40 to 50 seats in the House. I certainly would not be surprised in this environment if Democrats lose the Senate outright. We're in a battle for the culture and for our values. Like and subscribe to help keep our videos on the front line of the fight and top of your feed.